My brother's wife stood up at my parents' anniversary dinner and said, "He pushed me against the wall and put his hands on me." Everyone attacked me. My mom dropped her glass and my brother Miles grabbed me by the shirt and said, "You better tell me this isn't true." I said, "Are you serious right now? Carmen, I never touched you." She dabbed her eyes and turned to my parents and said, "This is exactly what I expected. He pretends like it never happened. You all know he blacks out and forgets entire days since his accident. He probably has no idea he even did it." I felt the air leave my lungs. Carmen knows about my memory issues and she was using them against me. Miles got in my face and said, "Do you remember that night or not?" I tried to think back, but there was nothing there. He grabbed my shoulders and shook me and said, "Answer me." I said, "I don't know." Miles looked over at my girlfriend Jade and said, "You believe this, right? You see what he's doing?" Jade wouldn't even lift her head. She just kept staring at the floor. Carmen grabbed Miles's arm and said, "I want to go to the police. I want to go right now." My mom had to grab the counter to keep herself standing. Miles let go of me and stepped back like I was contagious. The ring in my pocket felt like it weighed 100 pounds. Miles dragged me inside and told me to stay in the living room while they sorted this out. He came back a few minutes later and his face was twisted with rage. He said, "You're done. I don't want you near Carmen ever again, and I'm telling everyone what kind of person you really are." I asked him to just listen to me for a second and he said, "I don't want to hear your voice right now." I said, "I swear I didn't do anything." He punched the wall next to my head and screamed, "Then why can't you just say that? Why do you keep hesitating?" I didn't have an answer. My mom came in next and her eyes were swollen and red. She stood in the doorway and said, "I can't believe I raised someone capable of this." Then she walked away before I could get a single word out. I sank into the couch, feeling like the walls were closing in. Then I heard Carmen's voice floating through the window, telling Miles that she had been researching protective orders all week. My whole body went cold. That's when Jade walked in and leaned against the doorframe with her arms folded tight. She was quiet for a while. Then she asked me what night Carmen was even talking about. I said it was the night of her flat tire. Jade's expression shifted. She asked me if I knew where I was. I shook my head. She said, "You were at my place the whole night. You slept on my couch because you had to take me to get my car fixed the next morning." I just stared at her. She asked about the night before. I shrugged. She said, "We went to that new pasta place downtown." I still have the confirmation email. She pulled out her phone and started tapping through it. I asked her what she was about to do. She headed for the back door and said, "Carmen is going to explain this to my face." I followed her outside, and Carmen was still pressed against Miles, acting terrified. Jade walked straight up to her and asked, "What time did he supposedly do this?" Carmen sniffled and said, "After everyone went to bed." Jade holds up her phone and says, "Interesting, because he was passed out on my couch until noon the next day, and I have pictures with timestamps." My mom turns to Carmen and asks, "Could you be thinking of a different night, sweetie?" Carmen's face twitches and she says, "Maybe it was the night before." Jade pulls up the email and says, "He was with me then too, eating pasta and watching bad movies. Try again." Miles steps toward Carmen and says, "Just tell me when this happened." Carmen's voice starts cracking and she says, "I know it was sometime that week." Jade crosses her arms and says, "Name literally any night, I'll wait all day." Carmen shoves Miles off of her and screams, "Why do you all always believe him over me? He was about to propose and have everything while I'm trapped in a dead marriage with nothing to show for it." Nobody moves. Miles just stares at Carmen like he married a complete stranger. I proposed to Jade the next month. My parents and brother apologized for everything. Carmen moved out and Miles filed for divorce before the year ended. Miles stands frozen in the backyard staring at Carmen like he's never seen her before. My parents hover nearby looking completely lost. I stay in the doorway with Jade beside me. My heart still races from how close I came to losing everything because of Carmen's lie. The silence stretches out for what feels like forever. Nobody seems to know what to do next. Carmen keeps crying, but she won't look at any of us now. My dad shifts his weight from one foot to the other. My mom wraps her arms around herself like she's cold, even though it's warm outside. Miles just keeps staring at Carmen with this look on his face that I've never seen before. It's like he's trying to figure out who this person actually is. My dad finally breaks the silence and asks Carmen directly if she made the whole thing up. His voice shakes when he talks. Carmen's face crumples and she starts crying harder. This time, nobody moves to comfort her. My mom takes a step back instead of forward. Miles doesn't reach for her hand or put his arm around her shoulders. She stands there alone, sobbing, and nobody does anything. My dad asks again if she lied about the whole thing. Carmen just keeps crying without answering. Jade's hand finds mine and squeezes tight. Miles tells Carmen they're leaving right now and she needs to get in the car. His voice sounds flat and empty. Carmen tries to grab his arm, but he pulls away fast. He walks toward the driveway without looking back at any of us. Carmen stumbles after him, calling his name, but he doesn't slow down. She's still crying and saying wait and please, but Miles keeps walking. He gets to his car and opens the driver's side door. Carmen catches up to him and grabs the door, trying to stop him from getting in. He looks at her for just a second and says, "Get in the car or I'm leaving without you." His voice is so cold it makes me shiver even from across the yard. Carmen gets in the passenger side and Miles slams his door shut. The engine starts and they back out of the driveway. My mom watches them go with tears streaming down her face. My dad puts his hand on her shoulder, but she doesn't seem to notice. They stand there in the middle of the yard looking completely broken. My mom turns around and sees me still standing in the doorway. She walks over slowly like her legs aren't working right. She reaches for my hand. Tears keep running down her face and she says she's so sorry. Her voice cracks on the words. I don't pull away, but I can't bring myself to say it's okay. It's not okay, and we both know it. She squeezes my hand and keeps apologizing over and over. My dad comes over too and puts his hand on my shoulder. He says they should have believed me right away. He says there's no excuse for what they did. I just stand there not knowing what to say to either of them. Jade squeezes my other shoulder and suggests we should probably go too. She says my parents need space to process everything. I nod because I don't trust my voice right now. We head to my car and my legs feel shaky as the adrenaline finally starts wearing off. My hands shake when I try to get the keys out of my pocket. Jade takes them from me and says she'll drive. I get in the passenger seat and lean my head back against the headrest. The whole drive back to my apartment feels like a blur. Jade asks if I'm all right, and I realize I don't actually know how to answer that. I'm relieved everyone knows the truth now. But I can't stop thinking about how quickly my own family turned on me. My mom wouldn't even look at me. Miles grabbed me and shook me like I was some kind of monster. They all believed Carmen without even asking me what really happened. Jade reaches over and takes my hand while she drives. She doesn't say anything else, and I'm grateful for that. We get home and I just sit on the couch staring at nothing. Jade goes into the kitchen and I hear her filling the kettle with water. She comes back a few minutes later with 2 cups of tea and sits next to me. She says she knew I couldn't have done what Carmen claimed. She says she knows who I am as a person. Her words make my throat tight and I have to blink a few times. I pull out the engagement ring I've been carrying around all night and look at it. The small box feels heavy in my hand. I think about how I almost lost my chance to propose because of Carmen's jealousy. Jade notices and her eyes go wide. She stares at the box and then looks at my face. I tell her this isn't how I wanted to do this. I wanted it to be special and romantic and perfect. But after tonight, I'm more sure than ever that she's the person I want by my side through everything. She just proved she'll stand up for me even when everyone else turns against me. I get down on one knee right there in our living room and ask her to marry me. My voice shakes, but I get all the words out. Jade says yes immediately. Her voice comes out loud and clear with no hesitation at all. We both start crying happy tears, which feels like the first good thing to happen in hours. She tells me she would have said yes even if I'd asked her in a parking lot or a grocery store. I slide the ring onto her finger, and she pulls me up off the floor and kisses me. We hold each other on the couch and just breathe for a while. Everything that happened tonight still sits heavy in my chest, but at least I have this one perfect moment. My phone starts buzzing in my pocket. I can feel it going off over and over against my leg. Jade notices and asks if I want to check it. I pull it out and see the screen lighting up with text after text. My mom's name appears 3 times in a row. Then my dad. Then Miles. The messages keep coming in so fast the phone barely stops vibrating. Jade leans over and glances at the screen. She suggests I might want to at least see what they're saying. I shake my head and put the phone face down on the coffee table. I tell her I can't deal with that right now. She nods and takes my hand. We sit there for a while just breathing together. The ring on her finger catches the light from the lamp, and I stare at it. Jade asks what I'm thinking about. I tell her we should probably start talking about actual wedding plans instead of just saying someday. Her face lights up and she shifts to face me better on the couch. She asks if I'm serious right now. I say I've never been more serious about anything. We start throwing out ideas about what kind of wedding we want. Jade says she's always pictured something small and outside if the weather's nice. I agree because the thought of a huge formal thing sounds exhausting. She pulls out her phone and starts looking up venues in the area. My phone keeps buzzing on the table, but we both ignore it. She shows me pictures of a garden venue about 20 minutes from here. I look through the photos and tell her it's perfect. She saves it to a folder and keeps scrolling. We talk about possible dates and she suggests spring because fall might be too rushed. I agree, and we start looking at weekends in April and May. My phone finally stops buzzing for a minute, and the apartment gets quiet except for our voices. Jade leans her head on my shoulder and says she can't believe we're actually doing this. I kiss the top of her head and tell her I should have asked months ago. She says the timing ended up being exactly right, because now she knows for sure I picked her over everyone else. That hits me harder than I expected, and my throat gets tight. I wrap my arm around her, and we keep looking at wedding stuff on her phone until my eyes start getting heavy. I wake up to sunlight coming through the window, and Jade already awake beside me. She's on her phone scrolling through something. I ask what time it is, and she says almost 9. I realize we fell asleep on the couch, still in our clothes from last night. My neck hurts from the weird angle, and I sit up slowly. Jade hands me my phone from the coffee table. The screen shows 17 missed calls and way too many text messages to count. I unlock it and start scrolling through everything. My mom sent 6 messages asking if I'm okay and if she can come over to talk. My dad sent 3 saying they need to apologize properly and asking me to please respond. Miles sent one really long message that I have to scroll through multiple times to read the whole thing. He says he's moving out of the house he shares with Carmen and he needs to figure some things out. He apologizes again and says he understands if I don't want to talk to him. There are more messages from my mom saying she's worried and asking Jade to let her know I'm safe. I show the phone to Jade and she reads through some of them. She asks what I want to do. I tell her I need a few days before I can handle seeing any of them face to face. She agrees and says we should let them know we need space. I start typing out a message to my mom saying I'm okay, but I need time to process everything. Jade looks over my shoulder and suggests I mention that she's with me so they don't worry. I add that in and hit send. My mom responds within 30 seconds saying she understands and they'll wait until I'm ready. She adds that she loves me and she's so sorry. I stare at that message for a minute before locking my phone again. Jade gets up and heads to the kitchen to make coffee. I follow her and lean against the counter while she fills the pot with water. She asks if I'm hungry, and I realize I haven't eaten since lunch yesterday. She starts pulling out eggs and bread for breakfast. My phone rings on the counter and Sebastian's name pops up. I answer and he immediately asks if I'm all right. I tell him I'm okay and ask how he even knows about last night. He says my mom called him this morning asking if he'd heard from me. I fill him in on everything that happened with Carmen's accusation and Jade proving I had an alibi. Sebastian gets really quiet for a second, and then he starts swearing. He says Carmen deserves whatever's coming to her for pulling something like that. I agree, but tell him I'm more focused on moving forward right now. He asks if there's anything he can do, and I say, just being available to talk helps. We chat for a few more minutes about nothing important, and then hang up. Jade hands me a plate of scrambled eggs and toast. We eat standing at the counter because neither of us wants to go back to the couch yet. My phone buzzes again around 2 in the afternoon. This time it's Miles asking if we can meet for coffee, just the 2 of us. He says he needs to apologize face to face and explain some things about Carmen. I read the message out loud to Jade, and she asks what I think. I tell her I'm not sure if I'm ready, but I also know we can't avoid each other forever. She suggests maybe giving it a couple days so I have time to figure out what I want to say. I text Miles back saying I'll meet him, but I need a few days first. He responds immediately saying whenever I'm ready and he'll be there. I suggest the coffee shop near my apartment for Thursday afternoon. He agrees and thanks me for being willing to talk. I put my phone away and try not to think about what that conversation is going to be like. Jade and I spend the rest of the day watching movies and pretending everything is normal. She orders pizza for dinner and we eat it straight from the box. My phone stays quiet except for one more message from my mom saying she's thinking of me. I send back a short response telling her I'm doing okay, and I'll call her soon. Thursday morning comes faster than I want it to. I wake up feeling like my stomach is full of rocks. Jade makes me eat breakfast anyway, and tells me it's going to be fine. I get dressed and check the time about 50 times before I finally have to leave. The coffee shop is only a 10-minute walk, but I take almost 15 getting there. I see Miles's car already in the parking lot when I arrive. I take a deep breath and head inside. Miles is sitting at a corner table away from everyone else. He looks up when I walk in, and I can see how tired he is even from across the room. His eyes have dark circles under them, and his hair looks like he hasn't brushed it in days. I order a coffee at the counter and then walk over to his table. He stands up when I get close like he's not sure if he should hug me or shake my hand or what. I just sit down across from him and he does the same. We both stare at our coffee cups for a minute. Finally, Miles starts talking. He tells me he's filing for divorce and moving back in with our parents for now. His voice sounds rough, like he's been crying or yelling or both. He says he's been up all night thinking about the past year with Carmen. He keeps noticing all these little things he missed about how unhappy she was. I don't say anything yet because I can tell he needs to get this out. He talks about how Carmen would make comments about other couples and how they seemed so happy. He thought she was just stressed from her job. He didn't realize she actually resented their whole life together. Miles stops and rubs his face with both hands. Then he looks right at me and his voice cracks. He apologizes for grabbing me at the anniversary dinner. Nah. He says he should have listened when I tried to defend myself instead of just assuming the worst. I tell him I get that he was trying to protect Carmen, but it still hurt that he believed her so fast. He nods and says he knows and there's no excuse for it. We sit in silence for another minute. Then Miles starts explaining more about Carmen's behavior over the past few months. He says she kept dropping hints about feeling trapped. She would talk about how some people get everything they want, while others just get stuck. He thought she meant her career. Now he realizes she meant their marriage. She was jealous of me planning to propose to Jade. She wanted what we had, and she hated Miles for not being able to give her that feeling anymore. I ask him when he figured all this out. He says it hit him the second Carmen screamed about being trapped in a dead marriage. Everything suddenly made sense. All the weird comments and the distance between them. She'd been planning something like this for a while. Maybe not exactly this, but something to blow everything up. I take a sip of my coffee and let that sink in. Miles keeps talking. He tells me about other times Carmen made comments about my relationship with Jade. How we always seemed so in love. How Jade looked at me like I was the only person in the room. Carmen would say it in a joking way, but Miles can see now that she meant it. She was watching us and getting more and more bitter about her own situation. I ask if he thinks she actually believed I did something to her, or if she knew the whole time it was a lie. Miles says he's pretty sure she knew it was fake from the start. She just wanted to destroy something because she felt destroyed inside. That doesn't make it okay, but it explains why she did it. We keep talking for over 2 hours. Miles tells me more stories about their marriage falling apart. I tell him about how scared I was when everyone turned on me. How I thought I was going to lose Jade and my whole family in one night. Miles looks like he might cry again. He says he'll never forgive himself for that moment when he grabbed me and shook me. I tell him I understand why he reacted that way even though it hurt. He was trying to protect someone he loved. He just picked the wrong person to protect. Miles asks if we can try to rebuild our relationship. He says he knows it's going to take time, but he wants to try. I think about it for a minute. Then I tell him I forgive him, but he's right that trust doesn't just come back overnight. He needs to show me through his actions that he won't jump to conclusions about me again. He agrees immediately and says he'll do whatever it takes. We finish our coffee and stand up to leave. Miles hesitates and then pulls me into a hug. I hug him back and feel some of the weight lift off my chest. We're not completely fixed, but we're starting to heal. That's enough for now. 2 days after Miles and I met at the coffee shop, my phone buzzed with a text from my mom. She asked if she and my dad could come over for dinner and promised they would bring food from that Italian place I like. She said they wouldn't stay long if I didn't want them to. I stared at the message for a while before showing it to Jade. She read it over my shoulder and said we should probably let them come. She pointed out that avoiding my parents forever wasn't going to help anyone heal from what happened. I agreed and texted back that they could come over on Friday night. My mom responded in seconds with a heart emoji and said they would be there at 6. The next few days felt weird knowing they were coming. I kept thinking about how my mom looked at me that night when she said she couldn't believe she raised someone capable of what Carmen accused me of. Jade noticed me getting quiet and told me it was okay to still be hurt, even though I wanted to work things out. Friday came and I cleaned the apartment, even though my parents had been there before. Jade ordered me to stop reorganizing the bookshelf and just sit down. The doorbell rang at exactly 6, and I opened it to find my parents standing there with bags of food and nervous expressions. My mom dropped the bags on the floor and pulled me into a hug before I could say anything. She started apologizing again with her face pressed against my shoulder. She said there was no excuse for doubting me, and she would regret it for the rest of her life. My dad picked up the food bags and came inside looking older than I remembered. The lines around his eyes seemed deeper, and his shoulders sagged like he was carrying something heavy. We all moved to the living room and sat down in this awkward arrangement where nobody knew quite where to look. Jade brought out plates and started serving the food while my parents sat stiff on the couch. My dad cleared his throat and said they needed to explain some things about what happened. My mom nodded and started talking about how Carmen had been coming to her for weeks before the anniversary dinner. Carmen kept bringing up concerns about my memory issues and how I'd been acting strange. She would mention times when I supposedly said things I didn't remember or showed up places without knowing how I got there. My mom admitted she should have asked me directly instead of just listening to Carmen plant all these seeds. She said Carmen was setting up the accusation to make it more believable when she finally made her move. My dad jumped in and said they failed me as parents by not coming to me first. He said they understood if I needed distance from them, and they would respect whatever boundaries I wanted to set. I put down my fork and told them I was hurt by how fast they believed Carmen. I said it felt like they didn't know me at all if they could think I was capable of something like that. My mom started crying again, and my dad reached over to squeeze her hand. I took a breath and said I wanted to work through this because they were my parents, and I loved them. I just needed them to understand that trust doesn't come back overnight. They both nodded and promised they would do whatever it took to earn back my trust. The mood shifted a little when Jade held up her hand and showed them her engagement ring. My mom gasped and tears started streaming down her face, but this time they were happy tears. She asked when it happened, and Jade told her about the proposal in our living room. My dad smiled for the first time since they arrived and said he was proud of both of us. My parents promised to support us completely and help plan whatever kind of wedding we wanted. My mom asked a million questions about dates and venues and colors. We spent the rest of dinner talking about wedding stuff, and it almost felt normal again. They left around 9 and hugged us both at the door. My mom whispered that she loved me, and my dad patted my shoulder in that way he does when he's too emotional to speak. Over the next 2 weeks, I started meeting my parents for lunch or dinner every few days. We went to casual places where we could just talk and slowly rebuild what got broken. They made genuine efforts to show they trusted me and respected my boundaries. My mom stopped bringing up Carmen entirely, unless I mentioned her first. My dad would text me random things during the day just to stay connected. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. One night, Miles called and said he was moving into our parents' guest room. He told me he'd officially started divorce proceedings against Carmen, and his lawyer said it should be straightforward. The marriage was relatively short, and they didn't have kids or major assets to split. Miles sounded tired but relieved to be moving forward. He said living in the house he shared with Carmen was making him crazy. Carmen's number showed up on my phone one afternoon, and I blocked it before the call could even connect. Over the next week, she sent messages through mutual friends asking to explain herself. Every message said she was sorry and wanted to talk. I ignored all of them because I had zero interest in hearing anything she had to say. There was nothing Carmen could tell me that would make what she did okay. Sebastian texted asking if he could come over for game night and said he was bringing his new girlfriend. I told him to come by Saturday and bring whatever games he wanted. When they showed up, his girlfriend turned out to be really nice and easy to talk to. We played board games and ate pizza and laughed about stupid things that had nothing to do with family drama. It felt good to joke around like normal people again, instead of constantly processing everything that happened. Jade and Sebastian's girlfriend hit it off right away and spent half the night talking about some show they both watched. After they left, I turned to Jade and said we should actually start planning our wedding instead of just talking about it someday. Her face lit up and she grabbed her laptop off the coffee table. She pulled up venue websites and started scrolling through options while I sat next to her pointing out places that looked good. We spent 2 hours looking at different locations and taking notes on what we liked. By the end of the night, we had a list of 5 venues to visit, and Jade was already emailing them for availability. The first venue we looked at the next weekend sat on 3 acres of rolling grass with old oak trees scattered around the property. The coordinator walked us through the space, pointing out where we could set up chairs and showing us the small covered pavilion for the reception. Jade kept squeezing my hand and smiling at everything the woman said. We could fit about 60 people comfortably, and the whole place felt private and peaceful. The coordinator pulled out her calendar and showed us available dates for next spring. Jade picked a Saturday in late April when the weather should be perfect. We put down a deposit right there and scheduled another meeting to finalize details. On the drive home, Jade kept talking about flower arrangements and what kind of food we should serve. I felt lighter than I had in weeks, knowing we were actually moving forward with our life together. My mom called 2 days later and asked if we could meet for coffee. She sounded nervous on the phone, which made me nervous too. We met at a place near my apartment and she ordered tea but didn't drink any of it. She kept turning the cup in circles on the table and finally said she wanted us to go to therapy together. She said she couldn't stop thinking about how quickly she had turned on me, and she needed help understanding why she did that. I told her I appreciated that she was trying, and we could look for someone together. She pulled out her phone and showed me a list of therapists she had already researched. One name stood out because the description said she specialized in rebuilding trust after family betrayal. Her name was Willow Tate, and she had an office about 20 minutes from my place. My mom called right there and made an appointment for the following week. The waiting room at Willow's office had comfortable chairs and soft lighting that made everything feel calm. My mom sat next to me flipping through a magazine without really looking at it. When Willow came out to get us, she was younger than I expected, with kind eyes and a gentle voice. Her office had plants on every surface and big windows that let in natural light. She asked us to sit wherever we felt comfortable, and my mom chose the couch while I took the chair across from her. Willow started by asking what brought us in, and my mom's voice cracked as she explained what happened at the anniversary dinner. I sat there listening to my mom describe how she had failed me, and I felt my chest get tight. Willow turned to me and asked how it felt to hear my mom talk about it. I said it hurt knowing my own mother believed I could do something like that without even asking me first. My mom started crying and reached for the tissue box on the side table. Willow didn't rush either of us, and just let the silence sit there until my mom could speak again. She said she was so sorry, and she wanted to do better. Willow asked what doing better would look like, and we spent the rest of the session talking about communication and trust. By the end, my mom promised she would always come to me first before believing anything anyone else said about me. Miles texted me that night saying Carmen had moved to stay with her sister in another state. He said she wasn't fighting the divorce at all and just wanted it done as fast as possible. He sounded relieved in his messages, but also kind of sad. I called him instead of texting back, and he answered on the first ring. His voice was tired when he said hello. I asked how he was really doing, and he was quiet for a few seconds. Then he said it was weird living in a house that used to have Carmen's stuff everywhere and now felt empty. He said part of him was sad the marriage ended this way, but mostly he felt stupid for not seeing who Carmen really was. I told him he wasn't stupid, and Carmen had fooled all of us. He thanked me for not being angry at him, and we stayed on the phone talking about random stuff for almost an hour. Jade and I went back to the venue the following Saturday for our official tour with the coordinator. The weather was perfect, and we could actually picture what it would look like with guests and decorations. The coordinator showed us different ways to arrange the seating and where the food tables could go. She had photos from other weddings held there, and everything looked beautiful. We walked around the property holding hands and talking about our vision for the day. Jade wanted wildflowers and simple decorations that felt natural. I just wanted everyone we loved there celebrating with us. By the end of the tour, we had signed contracts and picked out our specific setup. The coordinator gave us a timeline for when we needed to make other decisions about catering and music. Driving away from the venue, I felt like we were really doing this, and it wasn't just some distant plan anymore. My dad called the next week and asked if I wanted to grab drinks with him. We met at a sports bar near his office, and he ordered us both beers. He didn't say much at first, just watched the game on the TV above the bar. Then during a commercial, he turned to me and said he was proud of how I handled everything with Carmen. He said most people would have fallen apart or gotten angry, but I stayed calm and let the truth come out. I shrugged and said I didn't really have a choice. He shook his head and said I did have a choice, and I chose to handle it with grace. Then his voice got quieter, and he admitted he panicked at the anniversary dinner. He said when Carmen made her accusation, his brain just went to the worst place, and he let fear take over instead of trusting me. He said there was no excuse for that, and he was sorry. I told him I understood he was trying to protect everyone, but it still hurt. He nodded, and we sat there drinking our beers and watching the game. Before we left, he hugged me tight and said he loved me. Willow scheduled another session, but this time with both my parents. My dad looked uncomfortable in the waiting room like he didn't want to be there. Once we got into Willow's office, she asked what we wanted to accomplish together. My mom said she wanted to make sure we never had another situation where they doubted me. My dad agreed and said they needed better boundaries. Willow asked what that meant to them, and we spent an hour talking about how they should handle things if someone ever came to them with concerns about me again. They both agreed they would always talk to me directly first, instead of believing secondhand information. Willow wrote down some guidelines we all agreed on and gave everyone a copy. She said rebuilding trust takes time, but having clear expectations helps. By the end of the session, I felt like we had actually made real progress instead of just talking in circles. Sebastian called asking if he could help Miles move out of his old house. I said I'd come too, and we met Miles there on Saturday morning. The place looked sad with half the furniture gone and boxes everywhere. Carmen had already taken her stuff the week before, so now it was just Miles packing up what was left. Sebastian and I loaded boxes into the truck, while Miles wandered around checking closets and drawers. He found an old photo of him and Carmen from their wedding, and just stared at it for a minute before tossing it in the trash. Sebastian tried to lighten the mood by making jokes about Miles being single again. Miles laughed a little and said at least he wouldn't have to deal with Carmen's family anymore. We finished loading everything by early afternoon and drove to Miles's new apartment across town. The place was smaller but nicer and felt like a fresh start. While we unpacked boxes, Miles said he was actually looking forward to being on his own for a while. He said he needed time to figure out who he was without Carmen. Jade and I spent that evening addressing save the dates for our spring wedding. We had ordered simple cards with our photo and the venue information. My mom had offered to help pay for the wedding, and we accepted because it felt like another step toward healing. Jade wrote out addresses while I stuffed envelopes and added stamps. We made a list of everyone we wanted there, which ended up being about 50 people. My parents were at the top of the list along with Miles and Sebastian. Jade's family would fly in from out of state. We talked about seating arrangements and who should sit where. Everything felt real now with actual dates and plans instead of just ideas. When we finished the last envelope, Jade leaned over and kissed me. She said she couldn't wait to marry me, and I said the same thing back. Miles's phone rang 2 weeks later while we were having lunch together. He stepped outside to take the call and came back looking relieved. He said Carmen's divorce lawyer had called about finalizing everything quickly. Carmen wanted the whole process done as fast as possible and wasn't asking for anything complicated. Miles said his lawyer told him it could be finished in less than 3 months since they didn't have kids or major assets to split. He seemed lighter after that call, like a weight had been lifted. I asked if he was okay with how fast everything was moving, and he said he just wanted it over. He said the sooner the divorce was final, the sooner he could actually move on with his life. We finished lunch and he paid the bill, saying it was his treat for being such a good brother through all this mess. I scheduled a solo session with Willow the following week because I needed to work through some things that kept bothering me, even though everything got resolved. When I sat down in her office, she asked what was on my mind, and I told her I kept thinking about how easily Carmen used my memory problems against me. I said it scared me that someone could do that again, and I wouldn't be able to defend myself. Willow leaned forward and asked if I really believed that after what happened with Jade. She reminded me that I had people in my life now who knew me well enough to vouch for me when it mattered. She said Carmen's manipulation worked because she exploited a specific moment of confusion, but that didn't mean my memory issues made me permanently vulnerable. We talked about how I could build stronger support systems and document my life better, just for my own peace of mind. By the end of the session, I felt less anxious about the whole thing and more focused on moving forward with Jade. Miles called me 3 weeks later sounding different, lighter somehow. He asked if I wanted to grab lunch and catch up. We met at a sandwich place near his new apartment, and he looked better than he had in months. He told me he'd been going on dates and actually enjoying himself for the first time in years. I asked if anyone was serious, and he shrugged and said he was just seeing where things went. Then he got quiet for a minute and said he'd been thinking a lot about his marriage to Carmen. He said he realized they were never really compatible from the start, but he ignored all the warning signs because he thought that's what he was supposed to do. He said Carmen always seemed unhappy, but he kept trying to fix it instead of accepting they just didn't work together. I listened and nodded because I could tell he needed to say all this out loud. He thanked me for not saying I told you, so even though I probably wanted to. I told him I was just glad he was doing better now. My parents kept showing up for Jade and me in ways that actually mattered instead of just saying sorry over and over. My mom started texting Jade directly about wedding stuff and asking her opinion on decorations and flowers. One Saturday they went shopping together for centerpiece ideas and came back laughing about something that happened at the store. My dad pulled me aside that same week and offered to help us work through all the planning details since he'd done it before with my parents' wedding. He said he wanted to make sure we had everything we needed and weren't stressed about money or logistics. Jade and I both felt like they were genuinely trying to be part of our lives in a healthy way instead of just feeling guilty. We had dinner at their house every other week, and it started feeling normal again, like we'd moved past the worst of everything. Jade's parents flew in 2 months before the wedding to meet my family officially. We all went out to dinner at a nice Italian place downtown, and I was nervous about how it would go. My mom made a point of sitting next to Jade's mom and telling her right away how grateful she was that Jade stood up for me when everyone else doubted. Jade's mom smiled and said she raised her daughter to trust her instincts and stand by the people she loves. My dad and Jade's dad hit it off talking about sports and work stuff. By the end of dinner, everyone was laughing and making plans to get together again before the wedding. Jade squeezed my hand under the table, and I knew she was relieved too. When we dropped her parents off at their hotel, her mom hugged me and said she was so happy Jade found someone good. We did our final walkthrough at the venue 3 months before the wedding, and everything looked perfect. The coordinator showed us where the ceremony would happen and where we'd set up tables for the reception. Jade kept pointing at different spots and asking questions about lighting and sound and flowers. She looked so happy planning everything that I just stood back and watched her for a minute. The coordinator asked if we had any other concerns, and I said it all looked great to me. Jade turned around and smiled at me and said she couldn't believe this was really happening. I told her I felt incredibly lucky that she stuck by me through everything with Carmen. She walked over and kissed me and said there was nowhere else she'd rather be. Miles texted me a few weeks later, asking if he could bring Raj as his +1 to the wedding. I knew Raj from a few family gatherings over the years and thought he was a good guy. I texted back that of course he could bring whoever he wanted. Miles called me that night and said he and Raj had been hanging out a lot lately, and he was glad to have a solid friend in his corner. I told him I was happy he was building a good support system and moving on from all the Carmen stuff. He laughed and said he was finally starting to feel like himself again. The divorce got finalized 2 weeks before our wedding. Miles called me right after he left the courthouse and said it was officially over. He sounded relieved more than anything else. He said at least now he could show up to my wedding and celebrate something good instead of dwelling on his own failed marriage. I told him I was glad that chapter was closed for him. He said he was too, and that he was looking forward to watching Jade and me start our lives together the right way. My parents hosted a rehearsal dinner the night before the wedding at their house. Everyone was there, including Jade's parents, Sebastian, Miles, and a few other close family members. My dad stood up halfway through dinner and clinked his glass. He said he wanted to apologize again for doubting me and thank Jade for her loyalty when it mattered most. My mom added that they were so grateful to have Jade joining the family. Everyone raised their glasses and the whole mood felt warm and happy. Jade leaned over and whispered that this was exactly what she hoped our wedding weekend would feel like. The morning of the wedding, I woke up nervous but excited. Miles and Sebastian came over to my apartment to help me get ready. We put on our suits and Sebastian kept making jokes about me finally settling down. Miles looked at me in the mirror and said he was really happy for Jade and me. He said watching us get married reminded him what real love and partnership should actually look like. Sebastian agreed and said we made it look easy, even though he knew it wasn't always. I told them both I appreciated them being there for me through everything. We finished getting ready and headed to the venue. The ceremony was beautiful and small, with about 50 people, including family and close friends. I stood at the front with Miles beside me as my best man and watched everyone take their seats. Then the music started, and Jade appeared at the end of the aisle in her dress. She looked perfect, and I felt my throat get tight. As she walked toward me, I thought about how close I came to losing this exact moment because of Carmen's lie. I thought about that terrible night at my parents' house when everyone turned on me and how Jade was the only one who fought for the truth. When she reached me and took my hands, I knew I was marrying the right person. We exchanged vows that we wrote ourselves, standing there holding hands in front of everyone who matters. I tell Jade she's my defender and the person who always believes in me, and her eyes fill with tears. She squeezes my hands tighter and says her vows about standing by me through everything. The officiant pronounces us married and everyone claps as we kiss. My mom is crying in the front row, and my dad has his arm around her shoulders. Miles stands next to me grinning and claps me on the back when we turn around as husband and wife. We walk back down the aisle together, and I can see my parents wiping their eyes. The reception starts right after, and people move from the ceremony area to the tables set up nearby. My mom comes over and hugs Jade for a long time, not saying anything at first. Then she pulls back and tells Jade she's the daughter she always wanted. Jade hugs her again and thanks her. My dad shakes my hand and then pulls me in for a hug too. Everyone finds their seats and the food gets served while people talk and laugh. Miles stands up with his glass and everyone gets quiet. He talks about learning from his mistakes and says he's grateful I found someone as loyal as Jade. His voice cracks a little when he mentions how Jade defended me that night, and he has to pause before finishing. He raises his glass and says he couldn't be happier for both of us. Everyone applauds and clinks their glasses. Jade and I stand up for our first dance, and the DJ plays the song we picked. She leans in close and whispers that she's so glad we didn't let Carmen's jealousy ruin our happiness. I tell her that watching her defend me that night was when I knew for certain she was the one. She smiles and rests her head on my shoulder as we keep dancing. Other couples join us on the floor after a minute, and the whole reception feels warm and happy. There's none of the tension from that terrible anniversary dinner months ago. My family has truly moved past what happened, and everyone is celebrating our new beginning. The DJ keeps the music going and people dance and talk and eat. Sebastian catches the garter later and holds it up like a trophy, joking about being the next one to get married. Everyone laughs and he takes a bow. The whole night feels joyful and completely drama-free. Exactly what we wanted after everything we went through. My dad pulls me aside during a quiet moment near the bar. He tells me he'll spend the rest of his life making up for doubting me that night. I tell him we're good now, and I can see he means it, which is all that matters. He hugs me again and heads back to find my mom. The reception winds down around 10, and Jade and I say goodbye to everyone. People line up outside with flower petals, and we walk through them to my car. Everyone cheers and throws petals at us as we get in. We drive to a hotel nearby where we booked a suite for the night. Tomorrow morning we're flying to Hawaii for 2 weeks. We check in and head up to the room with our overnight bags. The suite is nice with a big bed and a view of the city. Jade kicks off her shoes and sits on the edge of the bed. I sit next to her and we both just breathe for a minute, taking in the fact that we're actually married now. I think about how this whole nightmare with Carmen actually showed me who my real support system is. Jade proved herself completely when it mattered most. My family learned to trust me without question and to come to me directly instead of believing lies. Miles is rebuilding his life and finding happiness again. My parents earned back my trust through consistent actions and genuine apologies. Everything that happened brought us all closer in the end. We fall asleep holding each other, exhausted from the long day but completely happy. The next morning we wake up early and pack our stuff. We grab breakfast at the hotel and then head to the airport. The flight boards on time and we settle into our seats. As the plane takes off, I look out the window and feel genuinely at peace for the first time since that anniversary dinner. Carmen's gone and out of our lives for good. Miles is moving forward and building something better. My parents have earned back my trust through months of consistent support, and I'm married to my best friend who stood up for me when nobody else would. Hawaii is waiting for us, and we have 2 whole weeks to just be together without any family drama following us around. We land in Maui, and the warm air hits us as soon as we step off the plane. The hotel is right on the beach with palm trees everywhere, and we drop our bags in the room before heading straight to the water. Jade runs ahead and I follow her down to where the waves are coming in. We spend the afternoon swimming and floating on our backs, talking about how nice it is to be away from everything. That night we eat dinner at a restaurant with outdoor seating and watch the sunset turn the sky orange and pink. Jade reaches across the table and squeezes my hand. Over the next 2 weeks we hike through rainforests and see waterfalls, go snorkeling and spot sea turtles, drive around the island stopping at random beaches. One morning we wake up early to watch the sunrise from the top of a volcano, and Jade tells me she wants to buy a house with me when we get back. I tell her I want that too, somewhere with a yard and room for kids eventually. She smiles and leans against me while we watch the sun come up over the clouds. Hi. We talk about our jobs and whether we want to stay in the city or move somewhere quieter. She asks if I'd be okay living closer to my parents now that things are better with them. I tell her I think that would be good, actually, that I want our kids to know their grandparents. The vacation goes by too fast, and before we know it, we're packing to go home. We get back to our apartment late at night, and there's a card sitting on our doormat. I pick it up and recognize my mom's handwriting on the envelope. Inside, there's a note saying how proud they are of us, and a check that's way more than I expected. Jade looks over my shoulder and her eyes go wide. My mom wrote that they wanted to help with the honeymoon expenses, and that we deserve every happiness after everything we've been through. There's another card underneath from Miles with a bottle of expensive champagne taped to it. His note just says congratulations and that he's really happy for us. Jade opens the champagne right away, and we pour 2 glasses. We sit on the couch drinking and looking through all the photos from Hawaii on our phones. The apartment feels different now, like it's really ours instead of just a place we're staying. We start unpacking our suitcases, and I notice all the wedding photos my mom framed for us sitting on the bookshelf. There are gifts from the wedding still in boxes that we need to find places for. Jade hangs up a painting her parents gave us and steps back to look at it. She tells me this feels like a real home now. I agree and pull her close. The next few months are easy and comfortable. We fall into routines with work and dinners and lazy weekends. Sometimes my parents come over for dinner and sometimes we go to their place. Miles stops by occasionally and we watch football games or just hang out. He seems lighter now, like a weight lifted off him since the divorce finished. One Saturday he texts asking if we're free for lunch and says he wants us to meet someone. Jade and I show up at the restaurant and Miles is already there with a woman sitting next to him. He introduces her and she stands up to shake our hands. Her name is Sarah and she's a teacher at the elementary school near Miles's new apartment. They met at a coffee shop a few months ago and have been seeing each other seriously since then. Sarah is warm and funny, asking us about Hawaii and telling stories about her students. She's completely different from Carmen in every way that matters. Miles looks relaxed and happy, smiling more than I've seen him smile in years. After lunch, we walk outside together, and Miles pulls me aside for a second. He tells me things are really good with Sarah, and he's glad he didn't rush into anything after the divorce. I tell him I'm happy for him, and I mean it. Watching my brother rebuild his life with someone who's actually good for him, seeing my parents show up for us consistently, living this quiet, happy life with Jade, I realize we all got what we needed. The truth came out when it mattered most. We all healed from what Carmen did. And now we're all moving forward with people who genuinely care about us and support us. Everything that happened brought us closer and taught us who we could really trust. Standing there with my brother looking healthier than he has in years, with my wife waiting for me by the car, with my parents calling later to check in like they do now, I feel like we finally made it through to the other side.
Did you enjoy my story? What a journey it has been. I truly wonder, what would you have done if you were in my shoes? Would you have chosen silence to keep the peace, or would you have done what I did to reclaim your dignity? Let's meet in the comments below. I'm so curious to hear your thoughts. I'm reading every single one. Which city are you listening from tonight? If my story resonated with you, you can support me and help me bring more stories like this to the world by sending a super thanks. Your sweet support means the world to me and allows me to continue this journey with all of you. On the screen now, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend you watch next. There are so many more on my channel, each with its own lessons and triumphs. Don't forget to subscribe and click the notification bell so you never miss a new chapter. Thank you for being here with me. Until the next story, with love and respect.